You said under oath, and I quote, "There will be no politicization at the FBI. There will be no retributive actions taken by the FBI should I be confirmed." And in your written response to the Senate questionnaire, you said, I quote, "Personnel decisions shall be based on performance and adherence to the law."
This is where the story really begins. Not with shouting, not with theatrics, but with a promise made under oath and then put under a microscope. Before we dive into the full story, comment where you're watching from. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Kash Patel didn't stumble into this moment by accident. He stood before Congress, raised his right hand, and made a crystal clear pledge. There would be no politicization at the FBI, no retaliation, no punishment for doing your job. Those weren't vague talking points. They were sworn commitments, entered into the official record. And here's what makes Deborah Ross so effective in this exchange. She doesn't yell, she doesn't speculate, she doesn't accuse him outright. Instead, she does something far more damaging. She simply reads his own words back to him, calmly, precisely, line by line. Ross understands something crucial about accountability. You don't beat power with opinions, you beat it with receipts. She anchors the entire confrontation in Patel's confirmation testimony, then holds it up against what's actually happened since he took control. No spin, no exaggeration, just a direct comparison between promise and practice. And that's when the tension becomes unavoidable. Because once those words are on the table, the question isn't what Patel claims to believe. It's whether his actions match the standard he set for himself. Ross doesn't need to argue that they don't. She lets the contradiction speak for itself. This isn't political theater. This is oversight doing exactly what it's supposed to do, taking sworn assurances and testing them against reality. And from this moment forward, the entire exchange stops being hypothetical. It becomes a reckoning.
I'm going a little out of order here because I'm going to pursue some of the things that you were just talking to Mr. Fry about and remind you about your confirmation hearing. At your confirmation hearing in January, you said under oath, and I quote, "There will be no politicization at the FBI. There will be no retributive actions taken by the FBI should I be confirmed." And in your written response to the Senate questionnaire, you said, I quote, "Personnel decisions shall be based on performance and adherence to the law. And every FBI employee will be held to the absolute same standard, and no one will be terminated for case assignments." So I want to just go through a couple scenarios with you to get a sense of whether you think these are examples of politicization of the FBI or making decisions based on the performance and adherence to the law. So, first question. Would hiring FBI agents, analysts, and supervisors from only one political party being politicization of the FBI or making personnel decisions based on performance and adherence to the law?
We don't ask FBI people, applicants, where their political parties are.
Mr. Patel, do you ask FBI applicants who they voted for?
The FBI does not.
Are you aware that in the lawsuit that Mr. Driscoll filed against you and the FBI, he was asked who he voted for?
Since that lawsuit has been filed, that's ongoing litigation, I'm not able to comment.
Well, but it also means that you just said that what happened in his situation didn't happen. So we will go on to the next question. Let me ask you an even easier one. Does firing agents for working on the cases that they were assigned to and that the president didn't like, is that politicization of the FBI or making personnel decisions based on performance and adherence to the law?
The FBI doesn't terminate anyone based on case assignments alone.
Has the FBI ever been sued by somebody who felt that they were terminated based on case assignments?
In the entire history of the FBI, I'm sure they have.
No, since your tenure.
I'm sure there's ongoing litigation.
Yes. In fact, there is ongoing litigation. And in fact, people have been asked who they voted for. And in fact, you are running an FBI for the President of the United States rather than the people of the United States, because my questions were not hypotheticals. They are the things you have done during your tenure. And according to a lawsuit filed last week by long-term FBI agents, you fired former acting director Brian Driscoll. He had served with the Bureau for nearly 20 years, earned a Medal of Honor, Medal of Valor for bravery during the dangerous ISIS raid, and had a wealth of crisis response experience and led the FBI's critical incident response group. When the Trump administrations interviewed Mr. Driscoll for that role, they interrogated him about his political leanings and who he voted for in the last 5 elections. Questions Mr. Driscoll refused to answer because those types of questions impermissibly politicized the FBI. You also fired Steve Jensen, who served the FBI for nearly 2 decades and ran critical terrorism, counterintelligence, and organized crime operations, whom you once described as embodying what the American public demands of the FBI. But he was fired because he took part in investigating crimes committed on January 6th. And Trump's MAGA base lambasted you online for keeping him at the FBI. So he's no longer at the FBI. You also fired a decorated combat veteran with decades of experience in the Bureau, Special Agent Walter Jardia, because he worked on the investigation into the Russian interference in the 2016 presidential election and helped investigate Trump's ally, Peter Navarro. Director Patel, it is very clear that you have flunked your own test. You've put saving your job, which I actually believe you were being honest about during your confirmation hearings, over doing what's right for the FBI and the American people. That is not adherence to the law. Thank you, and I yield back.
What makes this exchange land so hard isn't volume or drama, it's discipline. Deborah Ross doesn't lean on slogans or partisan framing. She leans on the record. From the very start, she grounds the confrontation in Kash Patel's own sworn testimony. Not interpretations, not spin. Direct quotes. Promises he made under oath that there would be no politicization at the FBI, no retaliation, and no firings tied to case assignments. And that promise matters, because the FBI only works if its agents believe the law, not political loyalty, determines their future. The moment that belief cracks, the rule of law starts to erode quietly, from the inside out. Ross then methodically stress tests Patel's words against reality. She walks through real-world scenarios. Patel responds with careful, generic answers, and that's when she tightens the frame. She moves from hypotheticals to facts, from theory to names. Brian Driscoll, a nearly 20-year veteran, a Medal of Valor recipient, gone after refusing to answer political loyalty questions. Steve Jensen, praised by Patel himself, then pushed out after working January 6th cases. Walter Gardina, a decorated combat veteran removed after politically sensitive investigations. Individually, each case can be brushed off. Together, they form a pattern that's impossible to ignore. Ross isn't making an emotional argument. She's explaining how institutions actually get politicized. Not all at once, but decision by decision. When she says Patel flunked his own test, it lands because he wrote the test himself, and she proves, step by step, how it failed in practice.